There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the VMware Code Power Hour session for the Carbon Black Cloud. We're going to be talking about some APIs, the Python SDKs, and the apps we have with other kind of security products in your security stack. So to jump in and introduce myself, I'm Alex Van Brunt. I'm a senior software developer. I'm based out of Boulder, Colorado. And Houston.
And good morning, good evening, or just hello. My name is Risto, and I'm a software engineer at VMware. But more importantly, I'm part of Carbon Black's DevRel team. A bit about myself. I've been working with software for the past 9 years on various backend projects, some of which software for finance and other for software for lithography machines. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
All right, to go over our agenda, we're going to talk about some of the cyber threats today. We'll go and do a little overview of the Carbon Black Cloud. We'll introduce our team a little bit more and who we are and what we do, and then spend hopefully the most of the time on demos. We've got a lot of cool things we've done lately and want to show them off. And then if you have any questions, we'll try and answer all the questions and comments at the very end. So some of the cyber threats today, it's been an interesting kind of couple weeks. I know ransomware has been on the top of everybody's mind. So kind of the biggest, most recent one, the Colonial Pipeline attack, that was a pretty big impact. It took out their financial system and they shut down kind of everything to prevent it from spreading. Another kind of interesting trend article I saw recently, it's been up 150% in 2020. And even lately, it's been even crazier. I actually found so many articles that I had a hard time picking. So just kind of some of the few ones that popped out to me was the city of Toulouse. So government kind of local state operations, the Irish hospital, that was a little concerning. We definitely don't want our hospitals to shut down. And then a company as big as Apple, even Apple with all their security kind of infrastructure and units, they are also susceptible to attacks like this. So to jump into a quote, this is a director or a previous director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency of specifically the Department of Homeland Security, Christopher Krebs. This was an interesting kind of quote because it kind of related back to the COVID pandemic. So what was considered a low-dollar online nuisance crime only a short few years ago, ransomware has exploded into a multi-billion-dollar global racket that threatens the delivery of the very services so critical to helping us collectively get through the COVID pandemic. To put it simply, we are on the cusp of what is another global pandemic of a different variety, driven by greed, an avoidably vulnerable digital ecosystem, and an ever-widening criminal enterprise. So that definitely hit home for me. So to dive into kind of that cost he was mentioning, we have a couple of trends from the safety detectives. We can see just from like the overall impact as to how much this is kind of affecting the entire kind of world. We can see that from 2017 to 21, we went from what was potentially single-digit billions to what is now $20 billion potentially spent to pay off ransomware. That's huge. And then just for like a per incident scale, we've gone from what was a $46,000 to potentially a $380,000. That's almost a 10 times increase, which that's not great or easy for small mom and pop shops to kind of pay off. So what can we do kind of as Carbon Black Cloud to protect that? We'll kind of jump in. But I also found another fun little quote. I don't know if anybody has seen Mr. Robot. It's always a fun little, somewhat realistic hacking show. So Elliot, one of the main characters in the show, had an interesting quote. People always make the best exploits. I've never found it hard to hack most people. If you listen to them, watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. So even with a good security posture, people are one of the exploits and one of the ways into the system. So Carbon Black Cloud has published a couple reports and actually an ebook back in 2019 on ransomware. So Advance Your Ransomware Defenses is actually a nice brief history as well as a timeline of past ransomware. It also does a pretty good job of describing what ransomware is. So if you're not familiar with it, it does give you a kind of a good introduction. It also goes into some keys to stopping what was never seen before ransomware, as well as fileless ransomware. So how can you use the Carbon Black Cloud as part of your infrastructure, as well as other components as well. And then Modern Bank Heists 4.0, this is our latest 2021 report. It took into account input from 126 CISOs and security leaders, which it kind of revealed some of their findings that what was the original bank heist, which was a heist, has turned into more of a hostage situation for the financial institution. So those ransomware, they initially get in, and now they're holding those resources hostage instead of just taking them and stealing them. So this particular report is mainly just a starting point for a discussion between the cybersecurity community and the defenders of the financial sector, and how best to collaborate and wage a counterinsurgency in the cyberspace. So another sort of report to kind of start some of the conversations within your company or within your business unit as to how best to handle what's happening in today's infrastructure. So Carbon Black Cloud also has a wonderful threat research team. They're constantly reviewing and analyzing the market and checking to see what's there and how best to kind of ingest that back into our products through either predefined kind of security terminate rules or SHA-256 hashes to all the threat intelligence that you can use to kind of detect and find if you are already affected. So this one right here, Kring Ransomware. This is a snippet actually from our Carbon Black Cloud console. This is what you would see if this had affected your system. It's a process analysis tree, which kind of breaks down the different actions that were occurred. And we also have the README text that you would see on the system if you had a device that had been affected. So with the kind of sensors, the recent 3.6 sensor, we already default prevent rules to block TTPs that are often used by threat actors, such as AMZ protection and credential access protection. So we do a little bit already with our latest sensors to protect you right out of the box. As well as this is on our community page. So if you don't already have an account with us on community.carbonblack.com, please go ahead and check that out. We have a bunch of other ransomware ones as well. They're constantly reviewing them. So what is the Carbon Black Cloud, and what kind of features and functionality does it provide? So the VMware Carbon Black Cloud helps you advance your security wherever you are on your journey, and because it is a cloud-native platform, it can easily grow and scale with you. Once you've deployed one module on the platform, you can quickly and easily deploy additional modules as your needs evolve. So what are some of those modules? We've got kind of three core groups. We've got prevention, we've got the detect and respond, and we've got identify risk. So next-gen antivirus is our behavioral EDR that goes and performs analysis on the events that are coming through, and will detect, often using the MITRE ATT&CK framework to kind of reference the TTPs and show and prevent things that the system is doing. So this kind of helps prevent the customized malware and the fileless malware that occur that may not match directly to what is a known SHA-256 threat. We've got device control, which is our USB kind of prevention. So we can either allow or default block all USB devices. We have EDR, our endpoint detection and response. This is the full fire hydrant of data into the system, into the Carbon Black Cloud. So if this is enabled, you will see about 10 times as much more data to really give you that fine granular threat hunting that you would need to kind of really investigate and track through everything in your system. We've got managed detection. This is our service, our threat analyst service. So they are a team that will triage and detect the alerts and help kind of give you some feedback as to how best mitigate and manage when something comes into your system. For identify and risk, audit and remediation is a wonderful tool built on top of the OS query package that's out there. So this kind of allows you to do SQL-based kind of questions and queries to all of your sensors in bulk. So one example being Chrome extensions. If you wanted to know the Chrome extension installed across your entire architecture, you could easily use audit remediation to answer and ask some of those questions. Then we've got vulnerability management. This kind of came recently with our workload feature set, having joined VMware. This gives you a nice view into the CVEs that are affecting your system. At the moment, it is available for workloads and is soon to come to all endpoints. And then our most recent offering, Kubernetes Security. We're continually growing into this space. We just released a CLI tool that should be out or coming out in the next few weeks. So with all of these functionality and features, it is available on a variety of operating systems and applications. So we can see Mac, Windows, Linux. We've got a variety of Linux distros. We're constantly updating for Mac and Windows, as well as the public cloud offerings. So this is sort of where you see AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, as well as a lot of the VMware applications. So Workloads specifically helps out with vSphere. It allows you to view the VMs and kind of get a deeper insight into that architecture. So to do a quick 2-second sales plug, we do have kind of some bundles. So if you are a VMware customer already, we do have some Workload, so those VMware based integrations. So Essentials kind of gives you that core view into your system. So vulnerability management, remediation, and then the overall view. Once you kind of upgrade and need a little bit more antivirus behavioral analysis, you can go up to advanced, add in the next-gen AV and behavioral EDR. And if you want the full-on feature set, this brings in that enterprise threat hunting, so that full fire hydrant of data. So we know we aren't the only software stack in your security group. So what we want to do is enhance your workflows. So we have over 140 plus ecosystem partnerships and integrations to kind of fit in and integrate with your existing applications that you may already have. And this does include your IT workflows. We do have IT-based integrations as well. We want to increase the visibility. So the Carbon Black Cloud's ability to integrate into those tools provides greater workflows and holistic visibility that extends across your endpoints, networks, workloads, and containers. So really giving you that joint data across everything. And then to also amplify that, to deploying the Carbon Black Cloud alongside your other tools, it will improve the overall value of those that information, the efficiency, the efficacy improvements, as well as opportunities to automate and integrate further. So just to give a good shout out to our partners, we have quite a few of them, as I mentioned before. So if you're a company that has security and you want to be a partner, please reach out. We're always looking for more, and we're always looking to integrate and incorporate into your system further. So how do we manage and integrate with all of our partners? We've got the APIs, we've got a forwarder, and then we have those SDK toolkits that we also kind of ease and optimize for those integration scenarios. So for the APIs, we have robust authentication in RBAC. So that way you can configure exactly the access you need for that integration. That way you're not exposing your entire security Carbon Black Cloud functionality to one application. You can kind of limit and authenticate exactly to what you need. The forwarder for that EDR kind of situation where you have a ton of data. So certainly depending on the number of endpoints or sensors in your system, we're definitely going to have a large amount of data. So say 100K sensors, that's going to be a lot of data. So we wanted to provide a reliable, low latency, and scalable method. So this will push to S3, and I'll talk about this in a little bit further in detail. And then we'll talk about the SDKs and toolkits we've created as well. So that's kind of the Carbon Black Cloud SDKs, our most recent one, and Hristo will jump into that a little bit. So to dive into the APIs behind the Carbon Black Cloud features we talked about before, we've broken it down into 5 main groups. We've got our platform. So these are kind of the APIs that are available on all of our different products. We've got endpoint standard. So that was the behavioral analysis, the next-gen antivirus. We've got the enterprise EDR, so those endpoint detections and response, the audit remediation, and the workload. So across all of this, you can see we've got a wide variety of functionality pieces that we can use to integrate to your stack. Diving into the data forwarder. So when we push those alerts or endpoint events, we do more than just events. Into the S3, we can take use of the AWS functionality. So SQS is one option. This allows you to kind of, as new files and events are pushed into the system, you can go ahead and pull each one, get a notification, and process it. This is a lot better than enumerating or getting the files, as navigating through S3 kind of in broad depths is definitely going to be a little costly. Or you can use AWS Athena to kind of wrap the S3 in a SQL-like query functionality, so you could just process it as you need. Or you could use AWS Lambda. So as those new events are coming in, you could write automation or remediation steps right into the AWS itself, calling the APIs or pushing more data into, say, a ServiceNow or whatever other workflow kind of applications you have. So lots of options, given it is in the AWS and they're constantly growing their set of functionality. So a quick call out, endpoint events can be a lot. We do have filtering on them. So right here we have the alert ID is not null. So we can filter those endpoint events down to just alerted events. So we can kind of reduce that flow, since costs can sometimes be a little too much when you have 100K endpoints. So to give some shout out to our backend engineers who do a wonderful job constantly updating and giving new functionality and features. We did do a rebranding recently from what was called the Event Forwarder, and we're still continuing this effort to Data Forwarder. So that's kind of the new name for the feature set there. We've added three new endpoint event types: script load, file script load, and netcom proxy. And we're constantly refining and updating and making sure the data is available for what you're doing. As well as we've added a new configuration UI for the Carbon Black Cloud console. So I'll jump into that real quick. Let me just find my screen real quick. Here we go. So when you sign into the Carbon Black Cloud console, you'll be on a dashboard, something like this. So the new Carbon Black Cloud Data Forwarder UI configuration console is under Data Forwarders. So we're gonna just create a quick one real quick. I don't have an S3 bucket up, so I'm not gonna actually create it, but just to kind of show you what's available, I can do demo forwarder. So alerts, as I mentioned before, doesn't have filters. So in this case, we're gonna do an endpoint event. I put in my bucket name, so example bucket. This isn't actually a real bucket, but this would be your bucket name. The S3 prefix is kind of the subfolder within that bucket. So I could do events, and in this case I'm going to do netcon, so I'm going to do another subfolder. So I'm going to select the type. I want equal, and then I'm going to do netcon events. So if I wanted just the alerted netcon events, I could add another filter on top of this. So this is kind of an and operation, and then I could just select has alert ID. Now this configuration would just send netcon events that had alerted to the event folder. There we go, back to the slides. So now over to Hristo, who we are and what we do.
Thanks, awesome, Alex. Before we dive deeper into the integrations, let's step back and talk about developer relations. We're going to cover what we do, why we do it, and how it is beneficial for our users. These are the four main areas where a lot of our work is focused, which are API design, content, community, and code. For the API design, one of our most important tasks is providing guidance and standards engineers need to create a product that is received well by others. This includes every part of its interface, style, naming, operations, authentication, status code, errors, querying, and more. It also includes some aspects of the behavior and implementation details of the API as well. For the content, the role most of us and also the users are most familiar with. It has to do with creating content, which includes technical documentation, blog posts, Twitter, or social media content, or the preferred choice of most users, tech videos. For the community part, this is creating connections with our users, again with social media, through online forums, meeting them in person, or at conferences and meetups. I sure know I miss those a lot, so looking forward to those again. And for the last but not least aspect, the code. And this is probably the most exciting part of DevRel. It involves creating sample applications, sample repositories, libraries, and plug-and-play applications that helps the developer get productive with our products faster, reduce the entry barrier and the friction of onboarding. So providing a robust library of developer tools is a great way to show that we care for our community. And speaking of some great code content, I'd like to talk about the Carbon Black Cloud Python SDK. The SDK provides an easy way to interface with the Carbon Black Cloud products as Python objects. The supported products are Platform, Workload, Enterprise EDR, Endpoint Standard, and Audit and Remediation. Rather than just talking about it, let me show you a small code snippet which creates a very big impact. This is a very simple way to view all watch list alerts which were updated in the past 10 hours. And in fact, it's so simple that we can actually try it out directly into the console. Let me just switch up. So, gonna call my Python interpreter and import the Carbon Black Cloud Python SDK. Got a typo there. Yeah. And now to instantiate the Carbon Black Cloud object. And we can now actually test out the query. And that would be as simple as selecting the watchlist alert object. And maybe set the minimum severity of just 1. Severities go up to 10, but we won't go into too much detail on those. To 1, awesome. And before printing out the actual alerts, let's just see what the number of those are. We can actually do well, a bit one too many to print out, so let's just print out maybe the first one and see its details. Takes a second. There it is. We can actually see the severity as we queried it. We can see very useful stuff such as the process that triggered the alert, or some other details that would be beneficial for taking actions against that alert. Stepping back to my slides. This is another example for how simple the Python SDK makes gathering data for some of the processes that we use. For example, this is the process detail of the triggered alert. All of those dictionary keys right here hold a lot of valuable information that we can use to take actions on certain alert or process detail. Carrying on. And now I'm gonna demo an example script, which is part of the Python SDK. Basically, what we're gonna do, we're gonna fetch all VMs with that Carbon Black Cloud sensor installed and verify which of those are eligible for said sensor installation. So jumping back into my console. And actually learning the script is as simple as calling it out. It provides a very simple command line text-based menu. And for the purpose of the demo, we're gonna select the second option, which is search and facet compute resources. The script is gonna ask us if we want to use any criteria filters. We're gonna talk about them a bit later. So for now, we're just gonna skip them by pressing no, N. And basically, those are all of the compute resources in the given organization. A compute resource is a VM without a sensor installed. So as we can see, there are quite a lot of them. And what we can do now, we can make another query, but this time we can actually filter the ones that are eligible for a sensor installation. So hit yes to use the filter fields, and for the actual value of the eligibility field, we can take a reference to our developer network website, which is the place that we host all of our public-facing APIs. It holds a lot of example scripts, schemas, tutorials, and all that good information that developers need to jumpstart with their integration with our products. Another thing that we have are, of course, schemas. And as we can see, we can very easily find the schema for the compute resource object and find the field that we want to filter on. The field is eligibility. Basically, the available values are 3: eligible, not eligible, and unsupported. For the sake of this query, we're gonna just use the eligible one. And there we have it. We have 59 eligible compute resources, which we can further install the Carbon Black Cloud sensor on. But we can actually make yet another filter. Use the criteria filter again. Use the eligibility again. But this time, we're gonna filter on the not eligible. And why would we do that? Well, because we can see what the actual initial issue was, which is preventing us from installing that sensor, and we can actually take actions to resolve those. And basically, yeah, this very useful little script, which can give developers jump start into their integration with the Carbon Black Cloud. So jumping back to the slides. As we referenced, this is the developer network. As mentioned, this is where we hold all of our public-facing APIs. And going to the next demo, the workload management and vulnerabilities ones. For this demo, we're going to use the same script, but this time get a list of workloads and get the details for the said workloads which are affected by vulnerabilities. This option is under the third choice of the script, and it's as easy as just calling out the menu number. And as we can see, each entry has information, basic information for the workload, its ID, its name, and the total vulnerabilities, like critical, moderate, and low vulnerabilities. So, quit the script, get back to our... And so for the next functionality that the Python SDK supports is live response. Live response is a feature that's available across all platforms, across all products on the Carbon Black Cloud. It gives the ability to collect information and take action on remote endpoints in real time. These actions include the ability to upload, download, and remove files, retrieve and remove registry entries, dump contents of physical memory, or execute and terminate processes. Let's just jump back to the console. I'm gonna quickly fix my env. This is not part of the example script, but just set in my environment.
Yeah, this is using the latest version, which will be the 1.3 version of the Carbon Black Cloud SDK. So these are some a sneak preview into some upcoming features that's coming. So.
Yeah. As mentioned, again, this script will be available in the Python SDK repo. It's open source, so everybody is free to take a look at it or modify it as any way they see fit. And this is actually the actual script that we're gonna demo today. It has a simple command line interface, and we can print out the actual commands that it supports. To make a connection with a device, we must first establish a session. For the session, we need to know the ID of the device. Basically, the script makes it as easy as just calling out the command and entering the ID of the device. I have the device preset up. It might take a second, but it's now connecting to a certain device. Yeah, and as we see, we're connected, and we can now actually execute commands to the said device. Some of the commands feature process listing. Basically, we can list all of the processes that are running currently on the said device. And we can actually choose to terminate every single one of them just by executing the said command. For the purpose of the demo, we're not gonna terminate any processes, but rather download a file from the remote endpoint to my local machine. In order to do that, we can first list the content of the directory that we're currently in. And as we can see, there are a number of files, and we can pick and choose any one of those. Let's choose this PowerPoint file and execute the put command in order to download it to our machine. How we do that? We call out the command, we call out the file name, and then we need to call out the location that we want to download the set file in. And since I'm lazy, I'm just gonna copy paste it. And we also need to reference the file name that we want to download it with. And basically, as you can see,
Hristo, I think you want the get command, not the put command, right?
Correct. The put command will actually upload a file to the remote endpoint, which is just the opposite of what I was trying to do. So execute the get command. And there we have it. We actually downloaded the PowerPoint presentation to my local machine. And as you can see, Live Response is an extremely powerful tool we can use against malicious software or activities. And with this, I conclude my demo. Alex, you have the stage.
Awesome. Yeah, nice job with those scripts. They were super useful tools that we use with the Carbon Black Cloud SDK, so they're all built on top of it. So they will all be available at the end of this demo, or if not, already on there. So jumping into threat intelligence. So this is something we were talking about earlier with the cyber threats that happened today. So within the Carbon Black Cloud, you can use the threat intelligence to kind of watch and gain hits, so those watch alerts in your system. So just to kind of jump into a little bit of detail is what and how we store this data. There are a variety of type of IOCs, or indicators of compromise. So equality or regex. So these ones do a direct match on a field. So in this case, as our example shows, we have the field netcon IPv4 and just a list of the IPs that we'd want to detect and hit on. The regex, I don't have an example for this at the moment, but it would just be the usual regex operations that you would have to kind of do partial matching. So this could be useful if you're doing a directory or a file name and wanted to account for wherever it was installed, or if it was on multiple different types of operating systems. The other option is query. So this is kind of similar to the investigate or the searching that you would do in our console or on our search APIs. So in reference to the ones above, if we had sort of netcon locations that were going to Russia, and it was either on the Chrome or Firefox process, this would trigger a hit, and we would say, hey, here's an event we're seeing. It matched one of the IOCs that you had configured in your threat intelligence, and you should take a look. So that's another option as well. These IOCs are configured into a bunch of reports. This allows sort of a way to collect and organize the data, the threat intelligence, in a reasonable way that you can either easily disable the reports or to bulk add and remove, depending on whatever your kind of security posture looked like at that point in time. So in the system, in the Carbon Black Cloud Console, we have two options, feeds and watch lists. Feeds are ways to bulk manage reports. So this is oftentimes a third party or a threat intelligence kind of sharing mechanism where you'd want to grab a bunch of reports and add them all in at once. There's also reserved feeds. So this allows you, if you are a MSSP or if you have multiple kind of organizations or groups and you wanted to split up your Carbon Black Cloud infrastructure into a parent-child structure, you could share the feeds to all your childs. And then we also offer public feeds through our VMware Carbon Black Threat Research. So some of those reports that we saw earlier for the Kring ransomware or the other ransomware things that we have, they will go and configure feeds for us. And you can easily just go and configure and subscribe a watch list to trigger off of those. So feeds don't by default trigger hits or alerts. They're just kind of data sitting there. you would have to subscribe a watch list to it. So the alternative, the watch list, that is the collection that will trigger hits and alerts. They allow for reports to be disabled easily. So if you wanted to configure, remove, or manage them, you could manage them directly through that as well. It doesn't work with bulk as well, just based on the design and implementation. It allows you to kind of append and add and construct them over time. So if you actually had a investigate that you thought was important and you wanted to easily add it to a watch list, we do have console and UI sort of triggers and hooks to easily add additional reports to your watch lists. So to plug some URLs real quick, we do have a bunch of documentation. So we have the watch list manager APIs on the website that Hristo showed a second ago, our developer network. So watch list feed manager. We also have additional community articles that our threat research team has put out for guides to threat feeds. We have a threat intelligence module, so a way to import STIX TAXII, which I'll go into in a second. So as if you are an EDR customer and you aren't on our Carbon Black Cloud, we do have a way to bring those EDR threat feeds that you had into the Carbon Black Cloud as well. So that's an option if you are migrating from one of our products to another. So to talk about STIX TAXII and actually MISP as well, there's a couple different standards out there, some open source standards for threat intelligence. This allows for companies and groups to share their data and what they found easier and allow it to be imported into various security applications. So STIX is a format structure of the data. TAXII is the way in which that data is transferred. So that's sort of a paired combo. MISP is the alternative. It's kind of both a format and a sharing platform mechanism. So we've actually written a threat intel module within the Carbon Black Cloud SDK. So we've used our internal stuff, our internal tooling, to go ahead and build an easy tool. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen for that. And actually, before I even share this, I will share the repo so you can see where it's found, and we have a nice README that describes it. So if you go to the Carbon Black Cloud Python SDK, then go to examples, then enterprise EDR, since this is that threat intelligence, which is part of our EDR product, then threat intelligence. We have a nice README here to describe all the different functionality pieces, and if you have other forms of open source platforms that you'd want to use. This is written in a way that the different modules and components can be reused to build your own sort of integration. So to jump back to the code, I configured a anomaly feed that we had. So I pre-configured a feed ID, and I'll show you how I made this in Postman in a second. You could make it through the SDK as well, but just to show the variety of options that our APIs can be used with. I'll show that in a second. So with the threat intelligence for STIX TAXII, this is specifically STIX TAXII version 1. They use 3 paths to go and fetch and pull and manage that collection of data. And then in this case, I'm just going to do a singular collection. I have a start date, so they continue add and update. So you could run this in a cron job that runs every day and fetches the latest and pushes it into the Carbon Black Cloud. In this case, I'm just going to run it as a one-time pull. This just indicates the grabs that we would do. So if you were running this in a cron job, you could coincide this kind of size request to match your cron job amount. And just so I don't get overloaded at the moment, I'm going to limit the reports just to 1,000 in case they have a ton of this one. So the file that I'm going to be running is stixtaxi.py, and I'm going to be looking at the debug logs to show kind of what it's doing as it goes through and prints out. So for this, it uses the default credentials. So if you do install and configure your Carbon Black Cloud, you will need to install and create a credentials in the credentials.psc file. This is in the .carbon black on Mac or Linux. We do have documentation on this in the Carbon Black Cloud SDK README. So please take a look at our guides. We do have some useful things there to help you get up and started. So to go ahead, I'm going to tail the STIX TAXII log, and that was from my previous run. I'm going to go ahead and just execute it. So it'll take a second to set up. Go ahead and run and configure itself. And this will go ahead and pull in the STIX TAXII data from the last month into a feed. And I'll show where this shows up in the Carbon Black Cloud console. Takes a little bit to get up and going. There it goes. So we can see it's fetching each day. You can see it kind of going through and grabbing each one. And then in a second here, once it catches up to the current day, you can see it went through and dumped all of the XML. So STIX TAXII 1.0 uses the XML form of the data. It then goes and processes it. So it, you can actually see this is the post requests we made to the feed and pushed our reports. So this is that JSON data that we were able to convert what was the XML into the Carbon Black Cloud IOC report format for a total of 62 reports. So to go ahead and show the postman request, which you go ahead and pull my postman down already. So when I created the feed, I used a post to this URL. So threat hunter, feed manager, my org key. So each org has an organization key and then the feeds. And here was the content for that post request. So the name, a provider URL, the summary, the category, the source label. So there's just some information about it. I'm going to use a GET request to go and confirm that the feed has been updated. Oops, I'm using the wrong feed ID. Let me go ahead and grab that real quick for my configuration. Alrighty, this should allow me to get the feed. So I can now go through and see that the reports that we had fetched are now in here. So here's an equality with an IP address for that netcon IPv4. We have another IP address. So whatever they had configured in here, we did our best to convert it to our format and add in IOCs based on the data that they had. I can also go, and if I didn't want that data, if I wanted to wipe it out and replace it with a different set or needed to kind of do a fresh restart, I could just post an empty list, and this would override the reports and make it empty. So if I go back and get this one again, I can see I've now cleared that STIX TAXII data. Alrighty. Another tool we've created is the Threat Intelligence Binary Toolkit. So this uses, it was built on top of the Carbon Black Cloud SDK. So what we wanted to provide with this was an ability to analyze and pull down. So using the unified binary store functionality that comes with the Enterprise EDR product, which is a configurable tool. So if you didn't want the binaries for your computers and software to be uploaded, it does have a configurable file filter or folder filter, so you can disable certain folders from being uploaded or just entirely disable the feature if you didn't want binaries to be uploaded. However, if you do allow it, it does allow us to scan and detect and match reputations and update the Carbon Black Cloud with those reputations, which will affect the alerts. Or in this case, we can use a tool, which we built here, to go ahead and pull those binaries down and run an analysis against it. So for the example in the demo today, I'm going to use Yara, a open source kind of Yara rules engine that will allow us to just do some basic analysis on it, detect if there are any matching Yara rules, and then if they are, we'll upload that process hash to a feed that we could then use to detect if that appears in the system again. So there's kind of a couple components to it. It is a toolkit. So You could use this and build it out however you would want. So the first piece is the deduplication. So have I run and seen the hash before? And then we have another component, which is the retrieving of it from the Carbon Black Cloud. And then we have the analysis. So this is where it'll go and pull off to whatever analysis engine you configure. So today I'll configure Yara, but you could easily configure this to be a sandbox operation. And then it also has another last piece, which is the reporting component, which this is where we take the metadata that was found in the analysis and then push it up as a feed or a report to the Carbon Black Cloud. Alrighty, to jump into that demo, I've got it configured already. So I will, again, let's see if I can pull down the repo. We have a bunch of wonderful wiki and README documentation. So to plug that real quick, Carbon Black Cloud binary toolkit. So we have just a basic README. We've also, on this repo, we've added a bunch of wiki pages, both for a user guide as well as for a developer guide, in order to use it to whatever you needed to do. So with this, we do package in the code a binary tool, which is the Carbon Black Cloud toolkit component, which I'm blanking on where I saved it. There we go, analysis-util.py. So this is the tool that, when you install it, comes with the Python package. So it allows you to use something right out of the box instead of building your own. So that's what I'm going to use today to show a little demo as how we can execute it. So in order to configure it, you'll need a configuration file. This is for the tool. This allows you to configure the Carbon Black Cloud connection. So you can see when we communicate with our APIs, we need an API key. In this case, it's a joint ID and secret that we send as a token header. We have the OR key. And then this is, since we're using the UBS, this is the expiration. So we're going to get an S3 URL to download the file in order to run the Yara rules against. This could certainly be set to whatever time you wanted, whether it be longer or shorter, depending on how long or how many you're doing at a singular time. The database, I'm just using in memory. You can certainly write your own provider. So this toolkit was built to kind of swap out components as you need. We do have another inbuilt one for, I think, SQLite, so we can save locally to a file. But since I'm doing memory, this won't save the instance beyond just each run. And then since we're going to use Yara today, I have given it a name, the feed ID that I want to use, as well as the provider. So in this case, it's the Yara factory that we've written. And then for this one, I need to also specify the rules that I've configured. So if I go to my code, I'm going to run this command. So this CVC binary analysis tool, I'm going to actually, if I analysis, you can see that it's installed to my Python environment as a shim and is ready to be executed. I know, there we go. So with this, I'm going to specify my configuration file. So when I run it, this is where it'll pull all the information from. I'm going to set it to debug so we can see what it's going to do. Analyze, and then the file that I want to run. There are a couple commands that can be run for this. So if I do the help, my Python seems to be running a little slow today. We can see we have 3 commands: analyze, restart, and clear. So what restart will do is, if there were analysis or files that were unable to be pulled down at that point in time or failed because the Python crashed, we do use the database to store the state as it runs through the pipeline. So it can just pick up wherever it needs to continue and re-execute the analysis. And then clear will clear the cache. You can either do it by a timestamp or just all. and that will allow you to rerun them. So say you reconfigured the URL rules or something like that at some point in time, you can rerun everything without worrying about it skipping it because you had run it previously. So let's go ahead and run the tool. So in this case, the file, which I'll show that real quick again as well, is just a CSV list of SHA-256 hashes that I previously fetched. And actually, I'll go ahead and show how I fetched them since I have those API requests saved. So from our APIs, we do have a facet job. This allows me to go ahead and facet based on a query. So I've filtered, in this case, the event types to child procs, and I've also have the field that I want, so process SHA-256. So if I go ahead and make this request, I'll get a job ID. This is an asynchronous job. It takes some time to go ahead and process. So while that's going, I'm going to go over to the results query and pass in this new job ID. And in this case, it's the same, just with the ID and results. If I do a go ahead and get, I can see that I have fetched a bunch of new SHA-256 hashes. I found 23,298. There were certainly a lot in this organization, but at this point, I'm only going to fetch like 10, so to make it go quicker. Alrighty, let's go ahead and run it. Alrighty, we can see right away it went and analyzed. It's going to analyze the hashes, so it's going to go ahead and check the unified binary store. We can see that it went and fetched different hashes, and it should have found all of them. You can see 200s on, yep, all of them. And it's then going to go and fetch the files, which are stored in our S3 cloud storage. And then it performed the analysis, which completed. And then with that analysis, we were able to construct a report. And we can see we matched on a couple of those. So there were a couple files that we had found that matched our YAR rules. And it looks like they were all, we categorized in this case them by severity. So each severity is grouped into its own report. And it looks like we only had ones that matched our YARA 2 severity report. So that is the report that we've sent. So that's it for our demos. Thanks for listening to the presentation. We do have a few minutes at the end for questions. Please let us know if you have anything in the comments. So I don't see any questions at the moment. But if you have any, please reach out on our developer relations email, which can be found on the Carbon Black Cloud Developer Network. Or reach out to us on any of our emails. So, awesome. Thank you for showing.